and I am the managing editor of the Morehead State University Trailblazer. I am also a convergent media major and a photography minor. I started being interested in photography when I was in high school. It wasn't really serious. I was just I had like a little camera and I would go around and I'd take pictures out at my farm. But it wasn't until my sophomore year of high school I went to the Washington Youth Summit on the Environment. I went there with the intent of eventually becoming a conservation officer, and once I got there I realized that I didn't want to be somebody who enforced environmental law. I wanted to be somebody that was like the reason why laws were created, and I thought a good outlet for that was photography. I ended up going to Morehead State University to become a convergent media major when I realized that I didn't end up wanting to go into any sort of activism at all. I ended up wanting to go into unbiased journalism. So I was really glad to find Morehead State, and that's kind of where my love of photography really started to grow. So for me personally, there is this line between photojournalism and art photography. Where I reside and what I like best is documentary photography. And that is where I consider those two worlds to meet. There's this difference in style among photojournalism and artistic photography. But with documentary photography, you have the ability to pull artistic elements in order to tell a story. And that's where I feel like my photography resides mostly, is because I like to tell stories, and I like to tell the genuine stories of people because I feel like that's important. And using artistic elements to further communicate an individual story, I think, is where I prefer. In my purely artistic photography, I do have a theme. I find that in my art, some elements that keep reoccurring are the transcendence of the feminine form and feminine essence overall. And in order to do that, I typically use techniques like long exposure and just attention to lighting detail. So in my artistic photography, I typically use myself as the model, so to speak. I will pick out a location. Most of the time it tends to be outside, as that's where I feel more connected to. And I'll go out and set up my composition, get my focus ready, and I'll put a timer on and I'll go do whatever it is that I'm going to do to get the picture, whether that's kind of stand in one place and like move my head because I'm going for that extended shutter and that motion. So that's kind of the basic way that I'll do that. I had a friend who was willing to be my model for a project, this project specifically, and we didn't know each other that well at the time. So I took her out with me and I would set her in a scene and I'd be like, okay, you look great. Now all I need you to do is shake your hands and like nod your head back and forth like this. And she was like this, so she like looks completely crazy like this. And I'm like, yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly what I need. So that's kind of a little example of like my process, so to speak. But then as far as documentary photography goes, I spend time with my subject away from the camera. I like to talk to people and understand why they're doing what they're doing and what makes them themselves as an individual. Because it's not what the person is doing, it's who they are. Like, that's what's important about it.